What I have here is a swatch of double knit fabric that has an unusual bind off and cast on. Now this cast on, it produces a nice clean edge. It also does not use any waste yarn. There's no need for that, and there's no need for a crochet hook, and there's no need to remount those stitches when you're all done to finish your project. This does take a little bit of effort to get it to look that way, but once you're done with your cast on, you're done, and you can just continue on with your knitting. It's called a long-tailed cast on, and long-tailed cast ons are used quite often with needle knitting. So here it is on a double knit loom. But the first step that you need to do is to measure your long tail. And you do that by taking the end of your yarn, and you're going to measure it by wrapping each and every peg, putting a loop around each one in a zigzag fashion. Back row, front row, all the way down. Now the swatch that I showed you was 16 stitches, and I've already have my loom marked for 16 stitches, so we're just gonna keep going as if I were making that swatch again. So I've zigzagged all the way down. I'm here at the end, and I'm going to give myself a few extra inches there. And right there where my thumb and my index finger are, that's where I put my slip knot. So step one, measure the tail. So all of that is tail yarn right there. Step two, add a slip knot. Next, I'm going to put the slip knot on the back row of the first peg pair. And when I say peg pair, I mean the front and the back that go together. And look, it's on the wrong one. Right there. So the back row of peg pair number 1. Now I need to keep my tail yarn and my working yarn separate. The working yarn is coming right out of my ball of yarn here, and my tail yarn is outside of my project. My working yarn is facing inside my project. Now I want to show you the process of what's going to happen before we actually make the cast on. So the working yarn, those loops are going to be on the bottom, and the tail yarn, those loops will be on top. The working yarn is going to go, it's going to go clockwise around every bottom peg and counterclock around every top peg. Clock, counter, clock, counter. So it's making figure eights all the way down. See that? Now, the tail yarn will be the top loops, and it's going to do the opposite. Move that out of the way. All of this working yarn. The tail yarn is going to go counterclock on the bottom and clockwise on the top. Counter, clock, counter, clock. And so it's making a zigzag pattern. And that is also how we measured for the tail, to know how much yarn we were going to need for the tail. And those will be the top loops. Now I'm showing you these two separately so you can see what they look like and how this process works. But what you don't want to do is put all of your figure eight bottom loops on there and then put all of your zigzag top loops on and knit over. If you do it that way, your cast on is going to be quite loose. So we're going to do this one peg pair at a time. So with my working yarn, I'm going to finish the figure eight loop for number 1. And then with my tail yarn, I'm going to finish the zigzag, and I will knit that. Okay, and then pull snug. And then again, figure 8 with the working yarn, zigzag top to bottom with the tail yarn. Okay, I'm holding both of them right now with my thumb and my index finger over here so I can use my hook to knit those. Knit, knit, pull it snug. Even if you're pulling tight, your cast on it's going to come out just fine. Figure 8 for peg pair 3 and zigzag with the tail yarn. Okay, knit, knit, pull it snug, figure 8 with the working yarn, zigzag with the tail, knit, knit, pull it snug. Once you get the hang of this, it goes pretty quick, but you can already see it's a little more complicated maybe than what you're used to, but the result is awesome. Figure 8 with the working yarn. And when I'm doing this on my own, I really do talk to myself. When I'm not making a video, I'm making a video in my head, I tell you, because it helps me remember. So figure 8 with the working yarn, then zigzag with the tail yarn. Knit, knit, pull it snug. Figure 8 with the working yarn, zigzag with the tail, knit, knit. This is a little cumbersome to do while making a video. Normally I would have this in my lap. Zigzag, or excuse me, figure 8 with the working yarn, and zigzag with the tail. I'm doing a lot of these so we can all have a lot of practice. I don't have a rotating double loom. I'm not sure how cumbersome this would be on that loom. Figure 8 with the working yarn and zigzag with the tail yarn. Knit, knit, pull it snug. I'm just going to keep going down to the end here. So if you didn't catch, the first 8 stitches, maybe you'll get it on number 9. Figure 8 with the working yarn, zigzag with the tail yarn, knit, knit, pull it snug. Figure 8 with the working yarn, zigzag with the tail, knit, and knit, pull it snug. Pull it snug. Okay, now I didn't come up with this on my own. I found this cast on in a book by Marla S, and she is a wonderful loom knitter. She has her, here's the book. Marla S, Knitting for the Board, the Loom, and the Rake. very talented. She has her own website, frameknitting.com, where you can purchase her books and her looms. All right, number 11 there. I have figure 8 on 11, and now I need a zigzag, knit, knit, and pull it snug. Then figure 8 on peg pair 12. Should have got a second person here to help me video. Okay, knit, knit, pull it snug. All right, almost to the end. Figure 8 with the working yarn, zigzag with the tail, knit, knit, pull it snug. Knit, knit, pull. Figure 8. Zigzag, knit, 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 pull it snug, figure 8, tail yarn, zigzag, knit, knit, and pull it snug. Then figure 8 on the last stitch. I apologize if some of this video is wonky. Okay, figure 8 on the last stitch. See that? And zigzag on the last stitch. Knit, knit, pull it snug. Okay, and that's it, mostly. All right, and I'm still left with quite a lot of tail yarn here. You probably see it better if I got that. Still have quite a bit of tail yarn left, and that's okay. What do we do with the tail? We just lay it down in the middle, like that, and forget about it. Like that. I would not cut that just yet, just let it dangle. After you've done a few rows, at this point with your working yarn, you can just continue with your pattern. And then your tail yarn, it's hanging, it's going across your work and hanging down here. You're going to knit right over it, and then when you're all done, this tail here is for the bind off. When you're all done, you can snip it. Sometimes what I find is that the stitch on this end might be a little loose, so then you would just take the tail and pull it just slightly, and maybe even a little more than you need to. Then you can snip it off, and then you can kind of stretch it in here, and that tail will be completely hidden, and this stitch down here will be nice and tight. So that's it. That is your long tail cast on for the double loom.